Hello, my name's Jeff Taylor, and we're here today at the 2019 Conference on Retroviruses and Opportunistic Infections here in lovely sunny Seattle for a change. And today I'm joined by two people who are working on something called the Last Gift Study at the University of California, San Diego. With me, Dr. Davey Smith from UCSD and Dr. Karine Dubé from the University of North Carolina Gillings School of Public Health. So thank you both for joining us today.
Thank you, Jeff.
So the Last Gift is a really fascinating study. Dr. Smith, can you explain to us kind of what it's about and what its purpose is?
The Last Gift study is designed to look at how HIV populates throughout the human body. And the reason that we're interested in that is if we're going to have an HIV cure, we need to know how to control all the places where HIV hides and perhaps either get rid of those reservoirs or be able to control them to make sure that they don't release virus. So this was a big gap in our understanding in HIV, so we created this thing called the Last Gift Cohort. And this is where people who are living with HIV get diagnosed with a terminal illness, usually not related to HIV, but cancer, heart failure, etc. And they enroll in our study, and we watch them over time before they pass away, and then when they pass away, we do a rapid autopsy. And the reason for the rapid autopsy is we want to collect all those samples as quickly and all the tissues and all the places throughout the body where HIV can hide as quickly as possible to save the proteins and the nucleic acids, etc., so we can really understand how the virus is persisting there.
So this is different from some of the other autopsy studies where people have donated their blood, their organs after
That is
death.
Correct. So autopsies have been performed since the beginning of the HIV epidemic, and that we've learned a lot from those studies. Our study is different in that people are followed very closely up before they die, so we can look at all the different measures in blood, etc., that we can collect, and then we do this very quick rapid autopsy at the time to best preserve those tissues, which are not done in the previous autopsy studies.
That's terrific. But obviously doing this kind of research at the end of life is new and something that hasn't been done before, and probably raises some ethical questions. Dr. Dubé, that's kind of your area of expertise. Do you want to address how we're looking at that in this study?
Yeah, thank you, Jeff. We've engaged the Community Advisory Board, the Antiviral Research Center, to try to find out what would be some of the ethical considerations for HIV cure-related research at the end of life. And we've come up with 5 different themes, including ensuring true informed consent for the study participant and ensuring that that consent is going to be done throughout the entire study participation. There's also a strong sense of altruism that is being fostered in the study. And also there's a tremendous patient participant centeredness in the study to decrease any chance of vulnerability for the participants. We also encourage that we maintain the risk and benefit balance in the participant. We know that these studies will benefit the science tremendously. And then finally, we need to ensure that community is really behind this. And so I wanted to ask you, Jeff, what has been the community perception of the Last Gift study?
Well, thanks for asking that. It's been fascinating. I serve on both the AVRC cab there at UCSD, and also we have a patient group in Palm Springs, and you very graciously came out and presented the study there, as did Dr. Sarah Gianella at one point. But it's been very gratifying to see how engaged people are in this. I think people really underestimate the amount of altruism in the HIV community. I think many of us accessed treatment just to stay alive back in the beginning, right? We realize that we are where we are today, and we have the lives we have because of this research and the people who made the sacrifices, both the patients who were in it as well as the researchers and other social scientists who came together to make it all possible. So I think it's a really important, and we underestimate how important it is to these people who often have been shut out of research for decades now because they're too old, they have other conditions, they don't meet the research criteria that they're looking for in the research they're doing now. And this is a chance to give back to something, what could be more important than the cure, right? This is what we've been wanting from the very beginning. So I think, it's very important to people. And it's been very gratifying to see that people would make all kinds of sacrifices. We've done a lot of research in this. I know I've collaborated with you on some of the focus groups and stuff. And, people would be willing to do almost anything. So I think it's very gratifying. And of course, it gives there's a responsibility for us then not to abuse that trust that they place in us, and let people know that this is not going to cure them, but it's a sacrifice they're going to make, and they're willing to do it. So it's been great. So thank you for asking. So what about the perceptions of the study patients that you've been interacting with? What have you found out that they've felt about the study? Has it benefited them?
That's probably been one of the biggest surprises that I've had in this study, is that as we started developing the cohort and talking to potential participants before the cohort started, and then after the cohort got going, it was really exciting to see people who are at the end of their lives, they've just received a terminal illness, tell me, wow, this feels like I'm actually doing something at the end of my life that's going to make a difference. And that just really warmed my heart to think that I was helping give somebody an opportunity to give back. And over and over and over in our participants, we keep hearing this, that they feel like this last gift, which is hence the name, is very meaningful to them.
Well, it's not just the participants, it's also their loved ones and family, right? We discovered have had the same experience, right?
Yeah, we interview both the last gift participants until the very end of life, and we also do some interviews with their next of kin and loved ones. And we find that participants are benefiting tremendously psychologically from being in the study, and emotionally it gives them peace of mind to know that they can be productive until the very end of life. And then the next of kin are also incredibly supportive of the last gift study. And it benefits them as well, including during the grieving process, to know that their loved ones have contributed to something so important than HIV cure research.
One of my favorite quotes was from a last gift participant's partner who said, they were talking, the participant and his partner were talking, and they said, we've talked more about important things in the past week than we've talked for 10 years about research and the end of life and what it means to be engaged in these sorts of things. That was very touching.
How many patients have you had enroll so far?
We have 11 enrolled, and 6 have passed away, so there's still 5 that are we're watching closely.
And then what's your goal for the study? How many would you like to enroll?
We enroll.
And what do you see happening going forward?
Yeah, so we're enrolling 5 a year. That's how much our grant is for. And we're writing new grants. We just unfortunately had a recent last gift participant pass away, and it was very surprising how many collaborators all across the country are wanting access to these samples. And pieces of samples were sent all over the country, the NIH, et cetera, to do very specialized things to go after the cure effort. And that was very rewarding for me to think that this is going to have a bigger impact, and also to think about what's the next steps for such a cohort.
Do you foresee that you would use intervention in this translational research model?
At the moment, the cohort is only observational, so we're only looking at what's going on. We're not actually doing anything per se. But the community response has been amazing. They really are pushing towards more intervention-based things. With a few interventions, we could really start to tease out what the mechanisms are of HIV persistence, how HIV hides, etc., and how to push it out of those hiding places. But as we discussed before, these are individuals who fall within what we call a vulnerable category, and that's where we really need the ethics underpinning to see whether or not interventions are ethical there. What's the interesting part is the participants are really leading. The community is really pushing us, and things like CAR T cells, and latency reversing agents, etc., are becoming to the forefront, where we have community members all the time like, we need to really go after this. And so we're talking about it, getting input, and trying to address those things.
Well, it certainly reminds me of the early days of the epidemic, where the argument from people living with HIV, truly trying to push the research agenda forward, was we have nothing to lose at this point. There's no reason not to do this, and we have an ethical responsibility to do it. And I think this is kind of the same situation, right? These people in this situation have said time and time again, I have nothing to lose by doing this, and everything to gain in terms of personal self-worth and giving back, and what it can benefit, how it can benefit science and people living with HIV.
Yeah, we are seeing the extraordinary altruism that is reflected in this study, people feeling a moral obligation to be part of this study. And there's a true partnership that happens between the researchers and the participants and the community, welcoming in the community as family. It's truly amazing. And we heard at this conference with Don Averitt the importance of the human connection, and I really think this is a theme that is reflected in the last gift study.
Well, Dr. Smith, you mentioned how touching it's been for you as a provider, right? You're the researcher, you're looking at the data and what can be learned from this, but it's also an amazing human experience. I mean, nothing is more human than the end of life, actually, when we experience our humanity at its fullest. So it's been gratifying to see how people have reacted to that on both sides.
It's been a big honor in my life to be involved in a study like this, to be at a place where people are at their most vulnerable times in their whole life, and yet also at their strongest. They really do have this grace of spirit when they're entering these studies like this, and it has been a big privilege of mine to be involved in that.
Well, terrific. Well, thank you so much both for what you're doing. This is really
Thank you, Jeff.
fascinating, and it's so nice to know that from death we might be able to save so many lives.
Yeah.
I look forward to hearing more as it progresses.
Yep.
Thank
Thanks.
you.
Thank you.